Today we'll be taking a look at the ProENV tool and how it can be used to start, stop, copy, modify, and update Epicor databases that use Progress as opposed to SQL. To start, let's go ahead and open up the ProENV tool. It will normally be located with your OpenEdge directory folder. In this case I have version 10.02a. Usually it's best to run ProENV as an administrator to avoid any permission issues you might run into. Now the ProENV tool is basically a modified version of the C command prompt, so you'll notice that a lot of normal commands work, such as if we used tree. We can also use help in order to get information on what functions we have available. Now let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to do today. Today we're going to take a database that exists, back it up, make a copy of it to another location with a new name, then we're going to restore that database, we're going to truncate information on it, and then we're going to start up the database and do a database analysis on it. First, we'll look at where the database is that we want to copy. Mine's in the C drive, Epicor, Epicor 905, and database. I'm going to be making a copy of this MFG sys. I've already gone ahead and made this copy folder down here, which is where I'll ultimately place it once I've made the copy. I'm going to move this over here so we can track progress as we go along. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is change the information on the lower left here. We'll see that it says ProENV. Make this a little smaller so we can see better. And I'm going to change it so I know exactly where I am in the application path. So now, by typing prompt, I'm at C Windows System 32. Now one thing that you should note when working with the ProENV tool is, if you aren't in a directory where you're currently intending for a file to go or be modified from, you will need to specify it in the path while typing out the information. So I don't really want to do that, so instead I'm going to change my directory using, I already have prompted in there. I'll use CD, can be upper or lowercase, doesn't actually matter, and I'm going to copy the directory that I want to go to. You can paste into the ProENV tool, you just can't use Control V. You need to right click and select paste. If you do Control V, you get a caret V, and that's not going to do anything for you. Now I'll hit enter, and we can see that the prompt location on the left has changed from System 32 to Epicor 905 databases. Now that I'm in the right folder, I want to create the backup. So probkup, followed by the name of the database, in this case MFG sys, and the name of the backup that I'll be creating. So MFG sys backup dot, and now let's give it a backup name. I'm going to name it BAK, but keep in mind that that's actually the default backups for SQL. Normally you'll want to name it something else. So in this case, I'm going to name it BK, just so I know that it's a backup for Progress as opposed to SQL. It'll tell me how many blocks it'll need to create the backup, and as we can see over on the right here, it created the stub file. Once it's finished, we can refresh and see that the database now has an actual size to it. Now that I've created a backup of the database, I'm going to copy the initial database over to the copy directory. You may be wondering why I didn't just move the database itself before making a backup, and this is more of a rule of thumb to always be cautious with your databases in case something does go wrong. Anytime you're going to be doing a major change or any sort of revision, it's good to create a backup of it. In my case, I just like to be extra safe by creating a backup before I copy it, and also for demonstration purposes it came in handy. So, in order to actually copy my database, I need to type in ProDB followed by the path where I want the database to go. So in this case, I'm going to go into the copy folder, copy everything, paste it into the line, then follow up with what I want the new name of the new database to be. In this case, let's name it MFG sys 2. Then I need to type in what the source database is, MFG sys. As I mentioned before, because I'm in this directory here, I don't need to specify the directory when I'm making the command. Now let's say I had, instead of copy folder, I wanted to call it copydb. You can have spaces or any special notations within the path, but you will need to encase it within these quotation marks. That way we'll treat it all as one long string as opposed to several commands. But I don't have a space in there because that's not the path that I'm using, so let's get rid of that and we'll hit enter. Now here it's saying the before image file of the database, mfgsys, is not truncated. So once I'm done, I'm going to need to truncate it. In order to do that, I will use another command. Since I'm done working in that source directory, the Epicor 905DB, I now want to work in this Epicor copy directory. So let's copy that directory and use my change directory followed by the new directory and hit enter. Now I won't need to specify the path unless I'm going to be doing something in a completely different directory, which will make typing things out a little bit easier. Now let's truncate the database. Pro-util, name of the database, -c, truncate by. That's a relatively quick command to run, and once it's done, we're ready to move on to the next task. Now, as I mentioned, I want to do a table analysis on this database. So, pro-util, name of the database, -c, tab, analysis, right bracket, and the name of the file. So I can name this whatever I want. So I'll name this mfgsys_tables.tab. That way I can prove that this is the file that's creating. Hit enter. Give it a few minutes to run the full analysis. As we can see on the right, it's already created the mfgsys tables. And now we can open it. If we open it with WordPad, we get this. Just as a word of warning, if you open it with Notepad, you'll end up with a mess that you can't really use. This information. It means nothing to you because you can't really interpret it. You could read through it theoretically, but you really don't want to. So again, always open the table analysis file with WordPad. Once it's open, however, we can see we get a lot of information about what's going on in the database. Here we can see that it'll list the records, size, minimum, maximum, the average, and the count. So we can see in this field we have 227,715 records. This will also mean that we can have a listing of every single table within Epicor's Progress database, or whatever database you're using. This can be useful if you need to find out how many records exist versus what you expect, or anything else. Let's close that for now. Now that we've done the table analysis, let's go ahead and start up the database. For this, I'll use the proserv, followed by the name of the database I want to start, followed by the port number that I want to use. In this case, I'm just going to start it up on port 2500. I know it's a valid port, and it's not in use by anything else. Here we can see the database has started, and we know that it started because we get this LK file, which means the database is locked. So it can't be modified or moved or anything like that because it's currently running. Now, let's say I wanted to stop the database, but I'm not currently available to access it on that server. As long as I have connection to the network, I can use proshut, the name of the database, followed by the host name, followed by the port number that I was using, followed by the memory. In this case, my instructions say to type out 2048. Hit enter. But I get an error message. What's wrong? Well, it's saying that the database... Oh, no, I just typed something wrong this time. What did I type? I put a hyphen in front of the E. I forgot the S there, or the H. So now that I've made a mistake, I can go ahead and actually use the up and down key in order to go to the previous directory. So here, I'll put in my H. I have all my other information in there still. Here, I'll select what I want to do. So in this case, I want to shut down the database. So I will type 8. Now I can select what I want to do in particular. Do I want to disconnect a user, do an unconditional shutdown, or an emergency shutdown? In this case, I want to do just an unconditional shutdown, which means that even if there are users connected, it will shut down. I could also just select to disconnect a particular user, but since I just started up this database and no one's using it, there really aren't any. So let's do 2, and we'll execute the shutdown. And as we can see on the right, the LK file has disappeared, meaning that the database is no longer running and no longer locked. Those are a few of the commands that you can use in order to manage your database, get analysis on it, and start and stop it as needed.